Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, March 11th, 2020. I guess, let's see. Well, I guess we've doubled our coronavirus load for the day. That seems like good news. Everything proceeding apace, more or less as predicted. And I think I saw this morning some numbers that indicated that the United States had finally topped 1,000, I guess, confirmed cases of COVID-19. So, things moving along just as we expected, pretty much, and just as expected, the president continues to dither his time away, and to the extent he's paying attention to coronavirus at all, it is to ponder devising economic stimulus response to what is certain to be a sizable economic impact from the spread of coronavirus, but not too much attention working with respect to addressing the disease. Italy, as you know, has closed for the season. It's done. They're finished with everything. I'm still not entirely certain that I understand what they are and aren't doing by way of enforcing their closure / suspension of everything. I understand, I guess, broader travel is banned, but continuing to travel to work, I guess, is still okay. And, maybe that's not a terrible solution to things, just so that everything doesn't break down all at once. Maybe it does helps flatten the economic curve. I don't know what it does for public health, but we'll see what Greg has to say about that one. Growing list of colleges and universities around the country who are moving to online classes only for the rest of the week. A lot, I guess we're lucky here in taking advantage of spring break coming in such close proximity for most schools to this outbreak. That gives a lot of schools the chance to shut down for 2 weeks, and one of the weeks, I guess, is a freebie. Although the real difficulty for a lot of the students is that not everybody, goes to Florida or goes home or does anything in particular for spring break, and a lot of times students who are away at school far from home don't leave at all. But these schools want to shut down and, I guess, sanitize every surface they can, and they would like all the kids out of the dorm, and it's beginning to create a bit of a problem for some of them as well. But I guess as timing for pandemics goes, I suppose it's rather fortuitous, so it's everywhere. I saw a list last night that included, a couple of the Ivy League universities getting ready to shut down. Pardon me, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, Harvard, among them. And also the UC system closing down. I saw Grinnell, I think. I saw a couple of, Bucknell University as well. I can't remember where I saw that list. It wasn't super important. I should have sat it aside. But here's the deal. We seem to be on pace also for getting, and I guess as usual, universities leading the way. I guess they're full of scientists or something, and we'll see how they handle the shutdown thing and what people do with kids returning home from college, and whether school systems, primary school, secondary school systems, start closing down too. We're starting to see that Fairfax County here in Virginia apparently adding an additional teacher workday, keeping the kids home from school one day and using that day to try and figure out / run tests / do whatever that is they need to do in order to see if they can move to online class instruction. That's also a big option here, and a lot of the colleges and universities whose spring breaks are coming up are moving to a schedule wherein they are teaching only virtual classes remotely, and then suspending things for the break, and then telling people don't come back after break. And I understand Harvard may even be saying don't come back at all, period, leave, take off, that's the end of the semester. I guess that's something Harvard feels like they can do. Sure, all of the kids you'll be hiring out of Harvard lost half a semester or more, but that's okay, Harvard. So I guess we're supposed to assume that they're well educated anyway, and just hire them. Let's see. All right, Greg Dworkin is with us. We should not delay so that we can get straight to all the important news. And as it turns out, there were primary elections, which would ordinarily be occupying top of mind space today, but everybody's sick, so no. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay so far. It's here in our county, so I'm just waiting.
Yeah, it happens. The pundit round that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks has had that bifurcation, coronavirus first and then politics second.
All right.
And the only day in the last 2 weeks that I varied that was after Elizabeth Warren got out. I did her first and coronavirus second because I wanted to get women's voices that I had been collecting onto that page. Because I assume I have the usual male blind spot and didn't see a lot of the things, so I wanted their voices to say this. I don't feel so constrained with Bernie, so let's do coronavirus first, and then let's do politics.
All right.
So you're going to hear a ton of stuff about Philadelphia and St. Louis, and I've mentioned that before. This happened from the 1918 flu pandemic, where Philadelphia refused to get rid of a World War I parade and basically gave thousands of onlookers the flu. I just checked this morning with the New York City St. Patrick's Day parade. Hartford, Connecticut is canceled. Boston is canceled. Dublin is canceled.
Yeah, there's your template.
But New York City's still on. But they did have a right up front, St. Patrick's Day and coronavirus. We've not yet heard from public authorities. Once we do, we'll make clear what we're doing, but for now it's on. Right? They're not going to stop it on their own is the point. You have to stop it. And so what's going to happen is the public health people are going to have to make some hard decisions. Now, the whole idea is to stop these things before they start. So you don't wait until you have 50, 70, 100 cases. Oh, by the way, there are 30 some odd cases in New York City this morning, if I haven't miscounted, many more in Westchester County. So when you look at New York State as a whole, there are a couple of hot spots.
Yes, I look at New York as a whole, sure.
But, the New Rochelle area, which is currently a containment area with things shut down like schools, has way less people and way more cases than New York City. So Andrew Cuomo's been on that, and it's, we're going to have to move to the point of saying, look, just close it, shut everything down, and don't wait until you have bad things happening before you do this. That's the way to slow spread. And the interesting thing about all of that is it's going to be local decision, and it's all happening by bypassing and ignoring Trump. Well, people are just not paying attention to him and not getting signals from him anymore. They realize he's full of it. In fact, I sent you a cartoon from my local paper. This is not a national thing. It's a local Hearst chain.
It will be.
And it's a cartoon of Donald Trump holding up an enormous hand sanitizer container, which is labeled Pure Bull.
So
Fact
far,
sanitizer puts experts in their place, leaves brains refreshingly soft, and Trump says to himself, it stops the spread of science, and like me, it's a natural. So basically, that's how people are responding to this. And so, don't listen to him. Basically, just don't listen to him. Don't pay attention to him at all. It just aggravates you. Just skip it and talk to your local people and see what's going on. And take it seriously, because in 1 or 2 weeks, it'll be wherever you are. It's already reached your area. And then in 7 to 10 days, you're going to have a whole lot more cases, assuming you have the capability to test, which we still don't, despite their promises, which is another reason not to pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. We're supposed to have 4 million tests available in like 3 days.
They move very quickly, so you may not remember him, but there was a Homeland Security secretary named Tom Bossert from 2017 to 2018 under Trump, Homeland Security advisor.
Really?
Homeland Security advisor is what he was.
Okay.
And he just put a piece in the Washington Post, it's now or never for the U.S. if it hopes to keep coronavirus from burning out of control, and then told NBC News in 7 to 10 days the U.S. hospitals are just going to get slammed, which they are. So that's what we're looking at. The quote was, "We are 10 days from a hospitals getting creamed."
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's not good.
So what you do is you use those 10 days and you do stuff, right? I mean, there's a big article in Atlantic and some of the other magazines, as I've been advocating, and Mark Lipsitch, the epidemiologist, has been advocating, are starting to free up the coronavirus stories from the paywall, so you get to read them.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So I've been advocating for that this morning. You could find that tweet and retweet it. That'd be very helpful.
Oh, where? Okay.
Yasha Monk writes in Atlantic, "Cancel everything. Social distancing is the only way to stop the coronavirus. We must start immediately." And, of course, we have the usual debates. Do this. No, I have a better idea. Do that. Well, that's good. They're all good ideas. Why are you talking about stopping sporting events when you should be stopping schools or churches? And the answer is yes, all of them. But it's easier to do sporting events or parades like the St. Patrick's Day parade. That's an on-off switch. People go or they don't go.
Yeah.
Right? If they don't go, it's not like, oh my gosh, my entire life has been disrupted. It's more true for things like conferences where vendors depend upon sales. But, you may lose some travel expenses. But that's quite different than closing schools down. Parades and events, one-off things, are still on-off switches. You go or you don't go. With schools, it's completely different, because if you close schools, then you got to make sure that the kids are taken care of. You got to make sure that they're fed. You got to make sure that all the social services, speech therapies, other social network kind of things that you get from school, you have to make sure that those are still happening. And so it's a logistical big deal, way, way, way bigger than shutting down March Madness.
No. Yeah, well,
which you're not going to get sued for, because I said that on the air.
Yeah, right. But the courts are closed, so it's all right.
Right, and the people who are going to sue you have all gotten everybody else sick, and they're in the hospital.
Yeah,
so
they also might be old, and they won't live to sue me.
That's one of the other things. Everybody's pushing the idea of the vulnerable. They're the ones that have to do this. If you're over 60, oh, that's me. If you're over 60, you have to do this and that and everything. Everybody has to do this.
Yes. Okay.
You youngs out there, some of you have underlying conditions. And by the way, you're the one spreading it to me.
Ah, yes. Yeah, it's confusing.
So it's not like you can do everything and then I have to stay in my house. You have to do everything because you have to do everything to shut it down. You're the vector.
I mean, if you're just carrying it around waiting for old people to come back out of their houses, that's not going to do us any good.
Yeah, this is from the Pundit Roundup, but Radio Free Tom Nichols, never Trumper, is very happy that Biden is doing well, writes, "Meanwhile, Trump has corrupted the flow of information to the news media and the public by encouraging a culture of presidential glorification instead of expert candidness." And then goes on, and I said, thank you for saying this out loud. That's why Pence is doing better than Trump. At least he's not attacking everybody that he's trying to deal with, like Jay Inslee in Washington.
Oh, yes.
But still, if Trump is going to be there, nobody's going to listen. And if Pence is going to start every discussion by, thanks to the glorious wisdom of our great leader, we did this, and now this is what's going on. He starts every conference like that. I'm not interested, and nobody's interested. And so he may be marginally doing better than Trump, but it's still bad, and they have to stop that if they want people to pay attention. The market is still crashing. Oh. The futures are down, 700 points or so. I mean, that's going to continue. Trump has this understanding after a month of this that has finally gotten through his thick skull and through that stupid red hat that you have to do something and not nothing, and the something he's decided to do is to try to preserve the markets. The part he hasn't understood, because it's simply too complex for his tiny little brain, is that the way to protect the markets is to deal with the virus. The way to deal with the markets is to deal with the virus. He hasn't gotten that far. That'll take another 3 months.
Yeah. No, he's got ideas about propping up the market or bailing out the market. Or
you address the market by addressing the virus. It's that simple, and if you don't get that, you shouldn't be doing this.
The underlying cause might be a place to look.
Root cause.
Okay. Well, he's not doing that.
Mm-mm.
And he won't at any time soon.
So Dan Dresner writes, why the coronavirus response seems so outsized? Why are people reacting to 3 cases? Everybody knows flu kills 50,000 people a year. Why are we doing this?
Okay, yes.
Or, again, like Rachel likes to say, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why the coronavirus response seems so outsized. This is why it seems to many as though the precautions being taken are so disproportionate. What's being asked of healthy people, people who, even if they contact the virus and contract the virus, are unlikely to get too sick, is to nonetheless change their behavior in costly ways, like giving up March Madness or a Emerald City Comic-Con convention, so that they can reduce the risk of spreading the virus to more people. Or, as Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies professor Johannes Arpelainen put it, with respect to travel cancellations, if you are a healthy adult, you are not canceling your event or travel or conference because of yourself, but because of the more vulnerable people who will suffer if you become a vector. Now, it turns out it's really easy to become a vector. I guess there's some 3 TSA people this morning who are being reported with the virus. It's not like they come into contact with people or anything.
Yeah,
from all over the world.
And just jab their fingers in places. Yeah.
So the idea simply is we're asking you to do something that on the one hand you don't feel sick right now. On the other hand, we're even telling you that when you do get sick, don't panic. You're not going to get that sick. And we're still asking you to do stuff. And for selfish, egocentric Americans, that just doesn't feel right. That's not what you do. You blame somebody else.
Yes, right. Well, why not?
Yeah. CDC is now telling people over 60 or who have chronic illnesses like diabetes, and by the way, there are people under 60 who have chronic illnesses, to stock up on goods and buckle down for a lengthy stay at home.
And only them? They're not telling everybody else?
Everybody else should, and I take exception, and many of the emergency managers take exception with that. I mean, you are recreating the dynamic of 10, 12 years ago with the 2009 pandemic, where CDC cautiously started to say things that made sense.
Yes.
And the outside people like me told them good, but not good enough. Well, we can't say that. A lot of people can't afford to do that. Well, you need to say that. There's reasons to say that. You have to consider what goes on in the school because the kids are going to get it. Yes, but school is very disruptive if you know.
Yeah.
But you have to consider these things and also do that. Yes, but the economics is very bad. Yeah, I know. I know you guys are very conservative and you have to be pushed. We are pushing you. This is exactly the dynamic that happened last time. And by pushing them, they got to the right place. But it took a whole lot of work.
All right. So
we don't have that time.
Yeah.
We only have 10 days. We don't have a year.
That's considerably fewer days than a year, as it turns out. Mathematically speaking, I am an expert on this. 10, less than 365.
Meanwhile,
sure.
Italy's fallen apart. Now, Italy's different in a lot of ways, particularly how old the population is. But basically, if you're over 80, you're getting knocked out in Italy.
Okay.
If you're under 60,
bad. Yes.
you might get a chance of getting medical care.
Terrific.
If you're over 60, not so much.
Oh.
Does that sound dramatic? It is. That's what's happening in Italy.
It's like there's a death panel.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's a death penalty for being old.
Yeah. Well, not
now,
death penalty.
You can get into a whole thing if you want to about how we take care of the aging in our society and how in society it's all built to the, whatever, I don't know the real number, but the 18 to 34 coveted demographic that watches this and buys that and everybody else gets ignored. I don't know. What I am telling you is I'm giving you this picture of the relatively sanitized stuff that's happening in Italy when you read the doctors' tweets about what's happening there, the people who are on the front lines pleading with the rest of the world to please understand what's happening here. I don't know if you want me to do that, but it's pretty grim.
Yeah, we might as well get some sense of it.
All right, so let's just start with the sanitized version here.
All right. Why not?
Italian doctors on coronavirus frontline face tough calls on whom to save. With demand outpacing supply of beds and respirators, medical workers are told to prioritize younger patients. In Lombardy, the wealthy region at the heart of Italy's coronavirus outbreak, a shortage of beds and medical supplies is forcing doctors to make increasingly difficult choices. The number of cases in Italy topped 7,900 Monday. Today's Wednesday. More than 70% of them in Lombardy. Hospitals are scrambling to increase the number of beds. They're putting people in the hallways, et cetera, et cetera. No clear sign when the epidemic will spike. There's 900 beds available for patients needing intensive care, and in some provinces, hospitals are saturated. Save scarce resources for those patients who have the greatest chance of survival. That means prioritizing younger, otherwise healthy patients over older ones or those with pre-existing conditions. So it's like you go around saying, I can't breathe. Well, do you have a pre-existing condition? Well, okay, well, next. I mean, it's kind of like that.
Wow.
That's bad, by the way. I would point out that's bad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We don't want that.
We don't want that.
Yeah. Use of the words pre-existing condition might get some attention. I'm surprised how few.
This isn't a discussion of how to pay for it.
Yeah. How few people are connecting underlying conditions. Which what? Well, I never heard of that. I don't think I have any of those with pre-existing conditions. Oh, everybody's got those. We have to protect that. I mean, it's not about paying for it, obviously, but it seems like I thought we just got to the point where we realized that not protecting pre-existing conditions was a terrible idea because almost everybody had one or another. But I guess now they are. I've never heard the word underlying. Don't know what that is. Bye.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to me. Let's see if I could just pull up one of these doctor ones here. So I got one here.
Yeah.
This is Jason Van Schuer, from a well-respected friend and intensivist consultant who's currently in northern Italy. And he's sending this out, and this is going to be a little grimmer, so this is a trigger warning for you. But I'm just telling you this is how it's going. I feel the pressure to give you a quick personal update about what's happening in Italy and also give some quick direct advice about what you should do. This was from Monday, so it's 2 days ago. First, Lombardy is the most developed region in Italy, and it has an extraordinarily good healthcare system. I've worked in Italy, UK, and Australia, I think, AUS.
Austria, possibly?
Austria, possibly. And don't make the mistake to think that what is happening in a third world country. The current situation is difficult to imagine, and numbers do not explain things. Our hospitals are overwhelmed. They're running 200% capacity. We stopped all routine. All ORs have been converted to ITUs, that's intensive treatment units. And they are now diverting or not treating all other emergencies like trauma or stroke. So if you get hit by a car, too bad for you. Take 2 aspirin and call me in a month. There's hundreds of patients with severe respiratory failure. Many of them do not have access to anything above a reservoir mask. That's an oxygen mask that builds up oxygen around you. So you basically put the oxygen on and go and see somebody else. Good luck. I hope you're here when I get back. Patients above 65 or younger with comorbidities, that's underlying conditions, that's pre-existing conditions, are not even assessed by the unit. I'm not saying not intubated. I'm saying not assessed. And no staff attends when they arrest. Staff are working as much as they can, but they're starting to get sick and are emotionally overwhelmed. So now the doctors start getting sick, so now there's less of them. So that just makes the problem even more. Yes. You get the picture here?
Yes. Pausing for a second. No staff attends when they arrest, like cardiac arrest. Like
exactly.
Okay.
My friends call me in tears because they see people dying in front of them and they can only offer oxygen. Orthopedics and pathologists are being given a leaflet and sent to see patients.
Like, what are you looking at and how
Please stop and read this again, right? Pathologists who haven't treated an actual live patient in years are being given a leaflet and say, okay, you're on. It's your turn on the ward.
Wow. Okay. Bad.
Right? We've seen the same pattern in different areas a week apart. There's no reason that in a few weeks it won't be the same everywhere. And that's the pattern. A few positive cases, mild measures. People are told to avoid the ED but still hang out in groups. Everybody says not to panic. Then you see some moderate respiratory failures, a few severe ones, but regular access to the ED is reduced. Everything looks great. People say only terribly sick people, so the ED isn't overcrowded. Then tons of patients with moderate respiratory failure over time deteriorate to saturate the ICUs. Then you have them on various and sundry small amounts of intervention, including oxygen. Then the staff gets sick, so it's difficult to cover for shifts. Mortality spikes. And then it also spikes from all the other stuff that you don't have time to treat. And everything about how to treat them is online, but the only things that will make a difference are don't be afraid of massively strict measures to keep people safe. That means shut things down like we were talking about.
Yeah.
If government won't do it, at least keep your family safe. Your loved ones with a history of cancer, diabetes, or any transplant will not be intubated if they need it, even if they're young. That means put on a ventilator. When they have respiratory failure, which is what this virus leads to when you get very sick. By safe, I mean you do not attend them, and you decide who does, and you teach them how to. Another typical attitude is read and listen to people saying things like, oh, that's bad, and then they go out for dinner.
Oh.
We've seen it. You won't be safe if you don't take it seriously. I really hope it won't be as bad as here, but prepare.
Okay.
Get the picture?
Yes,
When we talk about flattening the curve, what we're doing is preserving the hospital system.
Yeah.
You're doing it for the hospital system. Don't go to March Madness because you're preserving the hospital system. Yeah, it's a bit of an imposition on you. Suck it up.
Yeah,
Cancel that St. Patrick's Day parade. Preserve the hospital system. Make it so that, people are sick, but not all at once, so at least they can handle them. Yeah, otherwise, we're going to be Italy.
Right. Yeah, it's really going to be interesting trying to calculate the damage from this thing, too, especially as people are very focused on, well, how many people have it and how many people are dying from it, and, oh, it's not so bad, the flu is worse. But
a case. Another case in another state. I'm just trying to say that when you look at that picture from Italy and compare the message that we've been getting in the White House, you tell me whether that messaging has been appropriate.
Yeah. And we did find out yesterday that it was only 11 days or so, someone had calculated, between the time when Italy had the same number of cases that we had yesterday or 2 days ago and this disaster. So,
right. We are slowing things down. We are shutting things down, and it's developing a little slower in the United States than it did in Italy, and we're younger and we don't smoke as much, but take it seriously.
Yeah, all right. Well, you haven't got much time to take it seriously, and we'll see whether emergencies piling up makes people move faster or not. They're out shopping. That's something's happening, but okay, we'll be back in 2 minutes. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. If you're still here, we're still here. So we've got more news to bring in. I think, that's got to have given you some sense of what could be coming if we don't react properly, or maybe even if we do at this point react properly.
Well, there's still stuff we can do. Here's a Vox explainer, which makes everything okay.
All right, good.
How canceled events and self-quarantine save lives in one chart. It's a flatten the curve chart. I have a lot of different versions on it at the Daily Kos Punt Around today. But even if you don't reduce total cases, slowing down the rate of an epidemic can be critical, writes Carl Bergstrom, biologist at the University of Washington, in a Twitter thread praising the graphic, the Flatten the Curve graphic, which by now you should become familiar with, which was first created by the CDC, adapted by consultant Drew Harris, popularized by The Economist. The chart has since gone viral with the help of the hashtag Flatten the Curve. So you can go on Twitter and do Flatten the Curve, and then you'll see it, and that's all good.
That's another thing, by the way. We've all been blabbing without thinking about what it means about things going viral. And here's a virus. And
it's going viral.
Can we get you to understand what this means? No, never. I don't understand. How could so many people get it all of a sudden from out of nowhere? There was just 3 yesterday.
Right, exactly. Well, the chessboard and the rice.
Yes.
So let's talk politics a bit.
Everybody. Yes. Okay. Right.
You know what happened in politics yesterday?
I heard about some things that happened.
The important thing that happened yesterday?
What's that?
Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders canceled their rallies in Ohio at the request of the governor.
Oh. Well, who's the governor?
Governor Coronavirus.
Okay. He is now the governor of coronavirus. Okay, well, good idea.
Isn't that Mike DeWine? I don't know. I don't pay attention to that.
I'm sorry. I'll check. You report on the news that you had, and I'll check on the details.
Right. Well, Mike DeWine is the governor of Ohio.
Oh, he is? All right.
And he said he called on colleges to hold classes remotely.
Good idea.
Okay, there's only 3 cases in Ohio, but he declared a state of emergency, shut down Bernie and Joe's rallies, and is starting to ask colleges to hold classes remotely. That's what you want. You want them to do it before it explodes.
Yes.
So we are starting to do this. We are starting to shut down properly, and that's all good.
Yeah, great.
So there was also an election.
Didn't get me any hand sanitizer, but all right. Yes.
And basically, Joe Biden blew Bernie Sanders away.
That is what it looks like.
It was just like Super Tuesday all over again. So I know there's a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters. Let's talk adjustment reaction and how you have to get used to bad news, and then you sort of get depressed and also anxious and angry sometimes. And then that fades, luckily, some more quickly than others. And not everybody's in the same headspace at the same time. I'm not being dismissive of Bernie, but the math. The math is such that Andrew Yang, 2016 Bernie supporter, said, I'm endorsing Joe Biden.
Okay. Well, he says he's good at math.
Biden won every county in Michigan, Missouri, and Mississippi. Every county. If you look at a map and see where's the blue, which is assigned to Joe, and purple, which is assigned to Bernie, it's all blue.
Yes. I did see someone noting, for the record, that when they looked at it by congressional district, that Biden won Rashida Tlaib's district. So there's that, too.
So he picked up another, I don't know, 70 some odd delegates, just about 70. His lead is about 150 now, and it was about 80.
Okay. So that's
and he's going to win another 50 next week.
Yes.
And I think he's going to win like 473 in Florida alone.
Oh. Well, that's a lot.
No, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but Bernie would get skunked in Florida if he's still in the race by that time.
Interesting. Okay. He did win North Dakota.
He did win North Dakota.
Yes.
He lost Idaho.
True.
And Washington was tied last time I looked.
Yeah, it's about tied, and there's going to be slower in reporting. Vote by mail in Washington will slow things down.
Which is a good thing during the coronavirus epidemic.
Terrific
but
idea.
You know what? The huge, great good news is like everywhere you look, turnout is incredibly up.
Yeah.
People are into this. So people are getting off the sidelines and voting. If you're worried about Joe Biden being able to motivate voters, he's motivating the suburbs, folks.
Something's motivating them. Yeah.
He's motivating the, wait for it, David, yes. Abigail Spanbergers of the world.
Yes.
And they are voting for Joe Biden, and that's what's going to allow the Democrats to be, at the very least, competitive in November. Yes. I mean, the fact of the matter is that working class whites are a Trump stronghold. Biden might be able to chip into that, but you can match and exceed. I'll see your white working men and raise you suburban women, and that's how you win. This is from Michigan. Ryan Strzok from, I think, CNN producer, if I'm not mistaken, tweeted this yesterday. White men in Michigan. This is from my pundit roundup. In 2016, Sanders 62 and Clinton 37 in Michigan.
Yes.
White men in Michigan. Sanders 62, Clinton 37. In 2020, Sanders 49, Biden 46. Was it misogyny? Undoubtedly, but other things. Let's just say people didn't vote for Hillary for reasons, and let's, for today's show, leave it at that.
Okay.
In white men in Missouri, in 2016, Sanders 61, Clinton 38. In 2020, Biden 49, Sanders 45. Bernie can't win with those numbers. Bernie didn't win in 16 with the 16 numbers, and he certainly can't win in 2020 with 2020 numbers like that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, black voters over 60 years old in Mississippi.
Yes.
I've never seen a number like this. My jaw dropped. Biden 96, Sanders 3.
Yes. That's, okay. That's a big one.
Okay, you get the picture?
Yeah.
This is over.
Yes. So
Cannot be the Democratic nominee in the Democratic Party of 2020 without winning over black voters. You can't. It's great to win Latino voters over. That's important. Of course, they're not monolithic any more than black voters are monolithic.
No. Well, 93 is pretty monolithic. But
and again, we'll see what happens in Florida compared to what happens in Arizona. We'll see that next week. But it's over. You can't win if you're getting 3% of the older voters who are the consistent voters who are the ones to come out.
Yes, that's a problem too. That's true, and I understand.
Now, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I love doing that.
No, that's fine.
Not this time. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say you mentioned Arizona, and I guess that's the site of the next scheduled debate. I don't know what Bernie's going to do, and I don't know where he is mentally on this either. But like last time, there was a time when it was clear that it couldn't happen, and he should have gotten out, and it didn't happen. And I assume he goes forward perhaps for at least another week. And is Arizona, have they said what they're doing with their, are they having no audience?
No audience.
Too?
The audience has already been shut down.
Coronavirus, okay.
As I said the other day, it seems to me what they should do is no audience, and based on how bad the CBS moderators were, why don't they have no audience, no moderators, and just let the two guys talk at the table?
Yeah, well, but 6 feet apart. Please.
6 feet apart, but they can talk the way you and I talk. We just interrupt each other all the time, and that's normal, and it's like a conversation.
I wonder what it would be like if with no audience to have react. I mean, it might be good.
Just let him talk.
Or he might be yelling at an empty hall. One or both of them possibly.
Yeah, it would be like my family at Thanksgiving. Just let them talk. Let the old guys talk, and we'll listen.
Yeah, put a camera in there, I guess.
Exactly. No microphone though. Oh, okay. Put a microphone.
That would really be something. Well, he gestured more.
We could do it like MST 3000, and you have a bunch of little people up at the front commenting on it. It'd be great.
Oh, they absolutely should be doing that for politics. Something I've wanted to do for a long since before this show started, but I'm not likely to get that. All right, but so no audience, another debate. And I don't know, are there any key states out there that Bernie's been leading for a long time and he's looking to scoop up delegates in, and we're done with that?
Michigan.
Yeah.
You get my point there, right?
Yes. All right. I guess so.
Washington.
Yeah. I guess that was it.
The map just looks worse and worse for him, and then after that, there's Georgia after next week. Yeah. I mean, it's done. It's over.
Okay. I mean,
politics is a cruel sport, and I don't mean to be saying this to rub it in people's noses, but reality is reality. James Carville was a whole lot crueler about it when he was on yesterday, but that's okay. He was on with Rachel.
Yeah.
Rachel said, James, what should we do to help to make sure that Bernie voters feel welcome into Joe Biden's campaign? Shouldn't we do this gradually? And of course, Carville was, hell no. I mean, we won. Look at the voters. They decided. It's over. Shut it down. Shut this puppy down. I mean, no, not that quick. He hates Bernie, and so that's naturally what he was going to say. That's not the point. Bernie will decide. That's the thing. Sure. You can't tell Bernie what to do. That's both good and bad, right?
Sure.
Because the billionaires and the millionaires won't tell him what to do, but then again, nobody else will either.
Yes, and we were supposed to be
so if he decides that he's done, and it's not because he was pushed out by the establishment.
Well, in a way, yes. The establishment being everybody else.
Well, that's the thing. That's my point of view. Is he calls Nancy Pelosi the establishment? He calls black voters in South Carolina the establishment. He calls black voters over 60 in Missouri and Mississippi the establishment. I don't. I just consider them Democratic voters, and also known as people.
Yes.
But that's okay. The point is, if he comes to that conclusion himself, that's cool. That's fine.
Well, that's the way to do it. All right.
What's Elizabeth Warren going to do? She's going to endorse, Joe at some point.
Right.
I still think it would have had more juice had she done it yesterday or the day before, but she didn't.
Well, juice for who?
For getting her to be an important reason to claim what was going to happen yesterday anyway.
Yeah.
That's what politics is all
Biden
about.
wouldn't need it. Yeah, and I don't know whether it
was going to happen, but you might as well take credit for it. That's what politicians do.
I guess.
Did you ever meet Donald Trump?
No, thank God.
But that's what they do. You expect that. That's okay. You take credit for when it's good, and then you blame somebody else for when it's bad. So if it was going to be a landslide like yesterday, then you get your most juice by claiming that you were part of the reason. In fact, maybe the main reason.
I guess.
And then, therefore, listen to me. I have some ideas. You really should listen to me because I'm one of the reasons why you really won.
Maybe it's reverse psychology now, she'll say. Now, a politician would have done this and then claimed credit for it and then run around bragging. But
she'll do what she thinks is right. I'm just saying, that was my opinion. I thought that Buttigieg should have gotten out before Super Tuesday. He did. I thought that Klobuchar should have. She did. I thought they should have, endorsed Biden. They did. They're getting credit for a lot of what happened, but not entirely. But that's how it works. And so when you do that, Kamala Harris, she deserves credit, gets credit, and, so on and so forth. And, Elizabeth Warren supporters are never going to be happy with this. I'm not asking them to. But, the politics of it is that everybody's going to have to wind up in the same team. If Warren thinks that for her supporters, this is the best way to do it, more power to her. She's got to do it her way. Same with Bernie. So they're no different in that regard. But I'm just saying, in terms of how it looks to like everybody else who aren't in those groups, early's better than late.
I guess, although.
Now, the one person that's unhappy about all of this is Donald Trump. He really wanted a divided, angry, everybody fighting with each other, the Russians will help, thing going on well into the summer. And that isn't happening. He was hoping that the Democrats would act like the Republicans in 2016. Democrats aren't Republicans, and we didn't. Too bad for you, Donald.
Yes.
Bydon. Biden.
Oh. Huh. That's cute.
That's the new bumper sticker.
Yeah, all right. We'll take it. And, now people begin on speculation, I guess, on vice presidential selections.
Sure.
Instead.
Now, the political scientists, by the way, and this will get everybody angry,
good.
Say it doesn't really make a difference. You get about 2 or 3%. Of course, 2 or 3% in a close race might make a difference. My first and main suggestion is Kamala Harris. But, whatever. They don't have to listen to me. They don't have to listen to anybody. They'll look at Klobuchar. They'll look at Tim Kaine because they're Democrats. That would be a mistake, by the way. But they will. People keep mentioning AOC. She's too young. Yes. But she's actually doing some pretty deft maneuvering here. She'll be in Biden's camp before this is all done.
Yeah,
she's a politician.
I promise that. But she's doing very well, I think.
She is.
Handling everything beautifully, including taking criticism for actually enjoying Elizabeth Warren's appearance on Saturday Night Live.
Exactly.
Which is amazing. But okay. Yeah, she kind of knows more about what she's doing than people might have thought.
Okay, so Dave Wasserman, and these tweets are at the bottom of my pundit roundup, I had them all lined up here, says, what's become even clearer in the past week, Democratic voters do not want a protracted primary fight. Not everybody that votes in the Democratic primary are Democrats, but Democratic voters don't want that.
Yeah. I mean, I never do.
Right? And then I'll end this segment with Dick Pullman, columnist, Philadelphia, who says, it's fun to read the guy who helped lie us into Iraq. So he pulls out an old Ari Fleischer tweet. Yeah. Bye-bye, Biden. He's not coming back from this. South Carolina won't rescue him. His candidacy had been like a paper draw. It's dissolving before our eyes.
Oh, paper. Oh, did he mean paper straw? Probably.
I guess. But that's what he tweeted.
Ari Fleischer, he knows.
So politics. Good. He knows Democrats like the back of his hand. And besides, he's always so honest about things. You see, when you're a shill, and he's been a shill for Trump, just like you, Hewitt, no better, then you just have to read them for amusement. It's not like, I'm going to pretend to be a serious analyst here because I'm going to say this to the camera and not just laugh. but I know it's crap. I've got that same hand sanitizer that Trump is using.
Oh.
The bullshit one.
Where did you get this? I can't find it anywhere. Although, sometimes I wonder whether Ari Fleischer knows that he's full of it when he says it. There are some.
He has to. He's smarter than a lot of the other folks. Some of the other folks don't know, but the Hugh Hewitts and Ari Fleischers know.
But when did he say this? February 4th. He had to know. All right. Well,
it was a month ago.
Things did feel different there. Oh, by the way, there's I just clicked on that Fleischer tweet there. So I guess that's in response to Iowa. But then Quinn Hillier tweeting and responding, "Yep," to that. That's pretty good.
Yeah, Quinn is a decent guy. He's a never-Trumper. He's a columnist at the Washington Examiner, ex-House staffer. But he's fine with Biden, by the way, Quinn Hillier. The difference is that Ari is not.
Yeah, I guess, although his...
but that was what people were thinking. It's just that Fleischer likes to, wallow in it.
Yes. That's true. Now, Quinn at the time was just saying he agreed with him. So Quinn's headline was, Joe Biden can't win this race, so he should quit his quest.
Yeah, and Quinn was wrong.
Yeah, and that's the Washington Examiner.
Fleischer was obnoxious. I'm just saying there's a difference there.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Yep is kind of obnoxious, but in hindsight anyway. Yeah. All right, wrong and not quite as obnoxious.
Well, you can't get conservative guys who all know each other to not talk to each other. That just doesn't happen. Sometimes we get a little unrealistic about what we expect, right? Quinn Hillier, who is a never-Trumper and would love to see Biden win, is not going to say to Ari Fleischer, "You idiot, once you've said this, I will never speak to you again. You are now ostracized. You are dead to me." We keep expecting them to do that. Not going to happen. Yes, you got to, lower your expectations a little bit about, conservatives.
Well, okay. I never really felt
especially
like I had
if they're going to vote for you this fall, which they are.
All right, we'll see. I don't know about Ari Fleischer.
Grow your tent, not Fleischer. You're not allowed.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. We'll take it and run with it from there. All right.
And let me just finish up by giving you some actual numbers here. Okay. So Idaho. 48.9 Biden, 42.5 Sanders. Michigan, 52.9 Biden, 36.4 Sanders. May I respectfully point out the polls were right in Michigan? They really did adjust to what they didn't get right in 2016.
Is that right? Okay.
Missouri, 60 Biden, 34.6 Sanders. Mississippi, 81 Biden, 14.9 Sanders with 98% counting. That's very important because if Bernie gets 15, that's wonderful. And if he doesn't, he's going to lose delegates.
Okay.
And get shut out. That would be bad. So right now, it's not clear he gets anything out of Mississippi. North Dakota, 53.3 Sanders, 39 Biden, called for Sanders. And Washington, 32.7 Sanders, 32.5 Biden, with only 2/3 counted. And Bernie started with a lead. Late voting may mean, because like everywhere, the late voters are breaking Biden. So Washington is not clear that it's a Sanders win. But even if it is, if you win by 0.3 or 0.4, you don't get a ton of delegates out of it. So it was a real landslide for Biden because the ones he won big. And the ones Bernie actually wound up succeeding in, the states that he succeeded in, are small states with small wins. So that's not going to make up for Mississippi alone.
Yeah, not a lot of delegates at stake in North Dakota. And Washington, different story, but yeah, if he's going to end up essentially splitting the bill with Biden on that, that's a net loss, essentially.
As they say. So that's the story. That's the roundup. Coronavirus is important, serious, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. The Democratic primary is not only heavily tilting toward Biden, if not over completely, but it's going to be profoundly affected by coronavirus. So I'm happy to sit here in the interface between public health and politics because they're all intertwined.
Okay. The rest of the primaries, as you say, being affected by coronavirus. Are you talking about, you think, Well,
rallies will be canceled. Of course, we have to add, Trump is saying, I'm going to have 5 a day now that I know the coronavirus isn't real.
He really
but
loves
no,
us.
The very way the primaries are conducted are going to be affected by coronavirus. If Bernie's smart, he'll get out of the race and say coronavirus was the reason I did this early, and I'm doing it as a public service for all of the voters.
That's a thought. Yeah, worth considering.
Because it's going to happen anyway. You might as well, again, as we're talking, optics are everything. You might as well do it now and get credit.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, I guess if you're going to play that.
I mean, I was watching yesterday. Bernie announced first that he was shutting his rally down.
Okay, so he wins. There you go.
Pretty much. That's what his supporters were saying. Look at what Bernie did. It's really smart. Biden needs to do the same thing.
Excellent.
And then Biden did it.
Good.
And it turned out, as Joe Biden said during his excellent speech, maybe we should spend a moment talking about that, because he had a great speech in Philadelphia last night without a teleprompter. No, he's not senile. Sorry. But at the beginning of his speech, he just pointed out the reason that we closed those rallies down is because the governor told us to.
Yeah, okay.
All right. You spoiled the illusion of I'm the smart one who saw it first.
Oh, yeah. Right.
but, that's what happened. So, yeah, optics are everything. Take credit and say, I'm just doing this for public safety because I'm into the public. I'm here to serve you. And, that would be a wonderful thing.
Okay. You're not, is there any concern that later states' voting turnout would be impacted by people worried about?
Maybe. We don't know. So that's, part of the reason. Another thing they should do is everybody should do mail-in.
Yeah, they really should, but they won't have time to move to that. And I guess places where you're standing in line would have people concerned.
Yeah, but, they were standing in line in Washington State.
Were they? I thought everything was mailed in Washington
No,
State.
not everything is mailed in.
But
there are people who can go in and register and vote same day.
Okay. Well, I guess there's that. So
they were showing people in line, and so something's going on there.
It was on TV.
It was on TV. Must be real.
I thought, okay, well, I guess everybody's eligible to be able to mail in their ballots. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm not certain.
Something like that. But I think you can still go register same day and still vote. But
all right.
In any case,
bring gloves.
That may be the future. And then we have to get ready for election month.
Yes.
It's not election night. You start voting on March 1st, and we figure out who won on March 31st, like California. Mm-hmm. But it's accurate, and there's a paper trail.
True.
And nobody gets sick.
Yes, until they start.
So, it might. It's certainly going to affect rallies. It's going to affect debates. Mm-hmm. And so for that reason, it's going to have an effect on the primary. And so why not embrace it from a 3 feet distance for no more than 10 minutes?
Yes.
And, just go with the flow and take credit for everything that happens.
Okay. And they should debate in masks as well.
Lucha Libre masks. I mean, they should do Mexican wrestling, right? Yes. That was my idea. I thought they should have a steel cage match wearing masks and no moderators.
All right.
And no audience, and just go.
Talk quietly, but okay, any number of possibilities to glean from that. All right, well, we should start thinking about what people can do if they find that there are long lines where they're voting.
Yeah,
and they're worried
but
about
no
virus.
Kidding aside, the coronavirus is going to profoundly affect how the rest of the political season goes. It's going to be a big drag on the Republican response. There is playbook stuff from Jake Sherman and Politico today talking about the fact that Pelosi and the Democrats haven't shut down Congress. They say we're the captains of the ship. You don't shut it down. They're going to come out with legislation this week, which is not going to be the payroll tax cut, but rather other things that they want to do. And Sherman's analysis is, you know what? The Democrats have the Republicans on over a barrel. They don't know what to do, the Republicans. And the Trump suggests that things aren't going to work and they don't like them. And Pelosi's, steering the ship.
Okay. With fewer passengers every day.
On the Republican side especially, because they all went to CPAC.
There is that. So the CPAC sickness is...
And the ones that didn't knock them off at CPAC, they got knocked off at APAC.
I guess so.
Is there a BPAC?
No, but we ought to start one just for people who can't make it anymore. But Don Beyer, Democratic congressman from here in the Northern Virginia area, now he too in self-quarantine.
There's at least 2 Democrats. I mean, it's going to happen to more people.
Well, yeah, and the virus doesn't know anything about your registration as far as
by the way, something else to throw in here. Conservatives are getting really angry.
Are they? Over?
Yeah. Well, CPAC wound up telling, firstly, whoever this spreader was had enough juice that he could meet everybody important.
Yes. That's awesome.
And CPAC told the important people what was going on and tested the important people. And the rank and file who went to the conference and sat in the audience didn't get told, didn't get tested. They are pissed.
Welcome to the Republican Party.
Hello.
That's the way they work.
And so I'm just saying that that's just one example. There's going to be much more of this. And so if you think that, if Fox News isn't talking about it, therefore they know.
Yeah, a lot of them are going to have it. Probably.
A lot of them are going to have it. They're talking about it on social media. Just as we bypassed Trump, they're bypassing Fox News. They are talking about it. They're not happy.
Oh, well. I wish them. No, I don't know. I don't. Nothing.
I wish
no comment.
Well. Just leave it at that.
Yeah, right. Us, not them. All right. That's the way I feel about the country. Anyway, okay. Well, thanks, Greg. I don't have to be as kind or even scientific in any way, shape, or form if I don't want to be.
No, it's your show.
Yeah, that's right. The second hour will be wishing coronavirus.
But I don't want them getting sick because I don't want them getting you sick. How's that?
Okay. Well, they're not coming over to my house, and I ain't leaving here. So.
You're not going to CPAC next year?
No. Remember all those times that Hunter wanted to go to CPAC? I bet he's.
I remember
now. Yeah, well, who knew?
There were times when we were having Netroots Nation or Yearly Coast that CPAC was in the same building or in the same city or in the same venue or whatever.
They were having a different kind of conference. CPAC, I think, is always in Washington. So
but we've been in Washington, at the same time. Anyway, there's other things that have been going on too. The anti-Netroots Nation conference, which wasn't CPAC. But we always wanted to go and see what it was like.
Yes, until we found out that they were disease vectors.
Yeah.
So, okay, build a wall, I say, keep them all out. Thanks, Greg. Stay safe, wash your hands. We'll see you tomorrow. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Okay, let's see, what can we catch up with? Karen tells us that Baltimore won't be closing its public schools. You think that, they haven't yet, right? Maybe that changes later, but I guess they're not inclined to. And yet, most of the local colleges and universities have closed down. Johns Hopkins is closed. Yes, I saw them on the list. University of Maryland closing down its operations as well. Most of the state schools throughout Maryland that I saw were on the list as well. But I guess, so local government, though, in Baltimore not doing it. If government put forth a plan, parents and guardians could stay home with kids. Meals would be perhaps delivered. That's also very interesting as an option. I guess if the government steps in, then maybe they can trigger that sort of response. Not just closing the schools, but closing the schools and trying to actually make it possible for parents to take care of those kids, and where they need assistance with nutritional support, make some meal deliveries as well. So we're waiting around to see whether any local governments take that initiative. I imagine we'll begin to see it soon, but if the colleges take the lead, I suppose that will help things. The colleges have, better options, more flexibility, of course, than municipal governments in terms of deciding to shut down. All right, well, just kind of keeping an eye on things. Time to now switch over to what's in Pocket and what's been going on via Twitter in the last couple of hours too. Let's see. Some interesting developments from the courts yesterday. A very different outcome from the D.C. Circuit on a similar, related case to one that I guess Democrats in the House lost last time around. This is a win in this go round. Now, why Politico has this running under coronavirus heading, I have no idea. But the headline that I'm looking at is Democrats should get Mueller evidence, judges rule. You recall the other day that there was a ruling that said the opposite with respect to a judge getting a hold of an unredacted Mueller report. But here, a slightly different subset of Mueller's evidence and data that he has to share on this thing. So let's see. It says here, a notable win for House Democrats seeking to obtain more information from the Russia probe. Josh Gerstein, Kyle Cheney teaming up for this piece for Politico from yesterday. House Democrats scored a significant legal victory Tuesday as a federal appeals court panel granted them permission to access grand jury secrets from Robert Mueller's Russia probe. The 2-1 ruling from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, the very same one that gave us problems last week, upheld a lower court decision in favor of the House's ability to see redacted passages in the public version of the Mueller report, a 448-page tome, you may remember, that describes the 2-year investigation into potential links between Donald Trump's campaign and Russia. The report, released in April of 2019, also examined President Trump's attempt to stymie the Russia probe, not Ukraine, but Russia probe. If it stands, because that too could be reviewed en banc by the entire D.C. Circuit and or by the Supreme Court, if it stands, the decision will give lawmakers access to all the report's blacked out words, phrases, sentences, paragraphs, and entire pages, nearly 1,000 portions in all, as well as underlying interviews and memos cited in Mueller's review. And I'm not certain whether it really gives us access to all of them, but it certainly gives access to all which were withheld under, what was it, Rule 6E, that it was grand jury information. I suppose there could still be redactions based on personal privacy or ongoing legal matters or national security for that matter, but grand jury was responsible for a major portion of the redactions, and I guess that's over with. I'm just trying to think back to what was it we were reading last week. It seems so similar, and yet, let's see. So, like last week, we were reading about the D.C. Circuit Court. I'm going to go back to Eli Honig's writing about this here. Friday, so let's see, 2 weeks ago, coming up this Friday, the Court of Appeals deciding, that was the McGahn subpoena that we were talking about. But then there was also another case about, maybe that was the district court saying that it wanted access to the unredacted Mueller report, but that, I thought, I'll have to turn around and check. First, let me read, it's getting confusing. I'll finish reading the Politico story about the decision from yesterday, and then we'll double back and try and straighten things out, unless one of you listening has got a handle on it and can put two pieces side by side so that we can be clear exactly what the fine line is that the D.C. Circuit is drawing for us here. The Democrats' courtroom win, nearly a year in the making, and that is another important aspect of this, a year in the making, and it's not over, is a symbolic blow to Trump and his sweeping claims that his administration can block Congress from talking to witnesses and accessing information. This ruling is an unequivocal rejection of the president's insistence that he is above the law and his blanket refusal to cooperate with congressional requests for information, Speaker Nancy Pelosi said in a statement. It is also another rebuke of Attorney General Barr's brazen efforts to prevent evidence of presidential wrongdoing from being uncovered, which the courts continue to challenge. Yet again, the courts have resoundingly reaffirmed Congress's authority to expose the truth for the American people, just not by calling Don McGahn to give it to us, I guess. But the Democrats' celebration over the decision was dampened by the fact that it came nearly 5 weeks after the Senate acquitted Trump. Can you believe it's only been 5 weeks? On largely unrelated impeachment articles, involving his dealings with Ukraine, which you may recall is next door to Russia and used to be a Soviet republic. And there are remaining incredible tensions between the two countries. They're at war with one another, and the entirety of the aid that was withheld from Ukraine was aimed at dealing with that Russian aggression. The idea that it's largely unrelated seems ridiculous and irresponsible, and I just can't believe at this late stage people don't see the connection. But okay. The decision also came just 1 week after the House suffered a major court loss, here we are, in its drive to force testimony from former White House counsel Don McGahn, one of Mueller's star witnesses. So McGahn can't tell us what he knows, but I guess eventually we might be able to find out what Mueller wrote he thought McGahn knew. The House's victory is also no guarantee that lawmakers will get to immediately see the full range of Mueller's evidence. Appeals from the Justice Department are all but certain, and the case could still face Supreme Court review. However, peeking behind the deletions could shed further light on the Trump campaign's attempts to connect with WikiLeaks, or the infamous Trump Tower meeting between senior campaign staffers and a Russian attorney promising dirt on Hillary Clinton, Trump's opponent. The majority of the appeals court said, the majority of the panel, 2 out of the 3 of the judges, said the theoretical possibility of further impeachment proceedings was sufficient to authorize the release of grand jury secrets, which is everything that Armando told you was likely to happen when he was insisting that they ought to have been pursuing this stuff in court under the guise of, well, not guise, it's true, but with the claim that impeachment trumps the 6E protections against the release of grand jury material. He was so far correct, and I guess he's right until the Supreme Court, if they ever get around to it, decides that that's no longer the way we're going to interpret things, and the law is totally different than everything you ever learned or practiced. But so far, so good. So where are we? The majority of the court panel said theoretical possibility of further impeachment proceedings was sufficient. That's interesting. Judges, according to the majority opinion, should not micromanage the House's need for information in the context of an impeachment investigation. The courts cannot tell the House how to conduct its impeachment investigation or what lines of inquiry to pursue or how to prosecute its case before the Senate. Judge Judith Rogers wrote in an opinion, oh goodness, everything moved again, an opinion joined by Judge Thomas Griffith. Rogers rejected the Justice Department's argument that impeachment is not the kind of court proceeding in which grand jury materials are routinely available. Do you remember we did spend some time examining this in detail, and there was some question how the courts would interpret this rule. So Rogers rejects the Justice Department's argument that impeachment isn't an actual court proceeding and of the sort where grand jury materials are available. The constitutional text confirms that a Senate impeachment trial is a judicial proceeding, wrote Rogers, an appointee of President Bill Clinton. The term judicial proceeding has long and repeatedly been interpreted broadly. Now, the one judge dissenting here, Judge Naomi Rao, the only Trump appointee on the panel, dissented. She said the lower court had authority to lift the veil of secrecy on the grand jury materials, but not to order the Justice Department to disclose them to Congress. Interesting. The committee can point to no statutory entitlement to this information, and the judicial relief it seeks is contrary to historical practice and the separation of powers, Rao wrote. Rao also repeatedly cited the Senate's decision to acquit Trump on 2 articles of impeachment last month as a development that could diminish the House's need to access Mueller's evidence. A reasonable observer might wonder why we are deciding this case at this time. After all, the committee sought these materials preliminary to an impeachment proceeding, and the Senate impeachment trial has concluded, Rao wrote. Now, this is going to be interesting. Why is this controversy not moot? The majority simply turns a blind eye to these very public events. Let me double back on something I actually disagreed with a moment ago and just remind you of this. So Judge Rao says basically, a reasonable observer might wonder why we're deciding this case at this time. After all, the committee sought these materials preliminary to an impeachment proceeding, and the Senate impeachment trial has concluded. Well, what impeachment trial has concluded? Do you remember what it was that drew my objection a few minutes ago? That the decision comes nearly 5 weeks after the Senate acquitted Trump on largely unrelated impeachment articles. Well, I guess you don't really even need this, but to the extent that the impeachment articles of 5 weeks ago are unrelated largely to the subject of Mueller's report and certainly the grand jury material contained therein, then I would have to caution Judge Rao that she's without basis in concluding that releasing Mueller's grand jury information isn't still preliminary to an impeachment. There are many grounds on which Donald Trump could and should be impeached. To the extent that Ukraine is a separate issue, not addressed in the Mueller report, and I don't think that it is, actually. The Mueller report could have been addressed and was addressed in the Ukraine proceedings, but to the extent that Politico is right, and I think that they're not, but I don't think that that destroys the point we're making here. He very well could be impeached for any number of articles that might grow out of the grand jury material being discussed here and the rest of the Mueller report. So that's a major leap in her logic that just isn't supported by the evidence. A reasonable observer might wonder why we're deciding this case at this time. After all, the committee sought these materials preliminary to an impeachment proceeding, which would grow out of grand jury material from the Mueller report, which would be Russia-focused, and the Senate impeachment trial, which was Ukraine-focused, has concluded. So I don't know. Why is this controversy not moot? Because they're two different controversies. The majority simply turns a blind eye to these very public events, except they didn't turn a blind eye to the public events. Their eyes were wide open, and unlike Judge Rao, I guess, they observed that the impeachment proceeding that concluded was focused on something, at least Politico considers to be entirely different. Well, I don't think anybody has ever thought that Naomi Rao was an intellectual powerhouse, but maybe I'm wrong about that, and lots of people have said it. Who knows? Rao also found fodder for her dissent in the sluggishness of her own court, which received the appeal in October. The House's petition in district court was filed in July. The Senate trial of President Trump concluded more than a month before publication of this opinion, wrote Rao. Even when acting on an expedited basis, courts cannot move with the alacrity and speed of the political process, and indeed that process has moved on without our decisions. But the majority rejected her position, noting that the House had authorized its committees to pursue all ongoing impeachment investigations, including a Judiciary Committee probe related to Mueller, and could consider additional charges against Trump if the new evidence warrants it. That's the answer for Ricky, who's asking whether Trump can be impeached again. I believe we've addressed this several times. but maybe only on Twitter. I don't know. I think we must have talked about it on the show. Maybe it's just a rhetorical question at this point. But can Trump be impeached again? Yes, you bet. And the majority of the D.C. Circuit Court is essentially saying exactly that. The House has authorized committees to pursue all ongoing impeachment investigations, including the one driven by the Judiciary Committee as opposed to the one that was driven by the Intelligence Committee. But the real answer is they could if they wanted to, they absolutely could impeach Trump again on exactly the same articles of impeachment. There's nothing that says you can't do that. It's not the same as our normal double jeopardy rules. Double jeopardy comes into play when the jeopardy that attaches is criminal in nature, and you can lose your liberty, your life, your property, what have you. But that's not the case in impeachment. It's not. And what they should have been doing, I guess, the government should have been arguing with the D.C. Circuit. Maybe they would have found some. Maybe they would have gotten some help in saying, well, the fact that no double jeopardy or whatever applied, that jeopardy doesn't attach in the parlance that the lawyers use in an impeachment trial helps us distinguish between this and an actual judicial proceeding. And that wouldn't have solved it all, but it would have been something to hang on to as they scrambled for any foothold that they could get. Okay. So yeah, he can be impeached again. The decision from a 3-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit came just 10 days after a mostly overlapping panel of judges ruled for Trump. Mostly overlapping, is that right? Ruled for Trump in another closely watched case, Democrats' attempt to get McGahn's testimony. That panel ruled unanimously that the courts should not attempt to referee subpoena fights between Congress and the executive branch. The House has asked the full 11-judge bench of the D.C. Circuit to take up that issue. Rao painted her position as a logical and necessary outgrowth of the decision in the McGahn case. However, her claim on that point ran into notable resistance from Griffith, who authored that critical ruling but sided with the House on Tuesday. Unlike McGahn, this case does not involve a suit between the political branches over executive branch documents or testimony. Instead, it involves an application for access to records of the grand jury, whose disclosure the district court has traditionally controlled, wrote Griffith, an appointee of President George W. Bush. Griffith accused his colleague of seeking to chase jurisdictional phantoms. He said she was giving too much weight to the fact that grand jury records are typically stored by prosecutors rather than the court. Regardless of whether grand jury materials are judicial records, they do not become executive records simply because the Department of Justice stores them in file cabinets after the grand jury completes its investigation, he wrote. Interesting. The McGahn decision is likely of greater lasting impact because it could affect most fights between Congress and the executive branch over access to information. Conversely, the issue of lawmakers' access to grand jury-related records arises only occasionally. The legal battle over the Mueller evidence emerged from Democrats' impeachment probe, which came after Mueller's inquiry into Russian interference in the 2016 election. In the Mueller evidence case, the appeals court upheld U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell's order that the House Judiciary Committee should be allowed to see the special counsel's final report in full. The judge also ordered that the House be allowed to see the grand jury testimony or subpoenaed records supporting those statements. The Justice Department did permit House members to see most of the redacted information in the Mueller report, but insisted it could not share the grand jury information absent a court order. Democrats pressed Attorney General William Barr to seek such an order, but he declined and instead fought the House in court. And lost, I guess. while Justice Department officials began sharing some of the underlying FBI interview reports, known as 302s, with Congress. That process bogged down after the House formalized its impeachment inquiry last October, and the Trump White House stopped cooperating with impeachment-related investigations. All right. House Democrats had repeatedly pressed the D.C. Circuit to address the McGahn and Mueller cases before their impeachment proceedings concluded. The court heard arguments in both cases on January 3rd, days after the House impeached Trump, but it held back from issuing opinions on those subjects while the Democrat-led impeachment effort rolled forward, culminating with Trump's acquittal in early February. The much-anticipated rulings arrived as the House Democratic investigators continue shedding their impeachment-focused staffers, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi redirects the chamber's agenda toward kitchen table issues like the economy and health care. They should go back. How Democrats will make practical use of their win remains unclear. They won't. The House made only a glancing reference to the Mueller probe in the 2 articles of impeachment seeking Trump's removal from office over his alleged attempts to pressure Ukraine's leaders into launching investigations into his political rivals. But House lawyers also told the federal judges that lawmakers could still pass additional articles of impeachment based on the information they secure from the Mueller case, a possibility that always seemed remote and appears increasingly unlikely as the November elections near. It, of course, is absolutely warranted and absolutely necessary, but yes, no indication of any interest in the House leadership in doing so, which, I think is kind of a mistake. Anyway, yes, okay, so there you have it. Ricky commenting again, I didn't know you could impeach a president more than once. Happy to tell you that could be the case. We've never done it, of course, but, Trump wants to break records, so I suppose it's entirely possible that he may get the chance, and especially if something goes horribly wrong with the election, I would think he would get that chance again. But yeah, it doesn't look at all like House leadership is inclined to do it again. And I don't know, not really sure why, but I guess Abigail Spanberger wants the chance to have everybody claim that the most important issue in the election is whatever. I don't know. Our who knows? Healthcare, access to health, and it is important, but Trump really deserves to be held to account for so many things. And really, honestly, even if they turned around and impeached him based on the Mueller report, I would say there's too many things you're missing. And we're just never going to get satisfaction on those things. All right, let's see. I happened to see, Matt Schlapp, who runs CPAC, I guess, is flapping his gums in rather irresponsible fashion and saying basically that what he's learned from CPAC is even when there's an infected person in there among the thousands, it's very, very difficult to contract this virus. This is actually the opposite of what is happening. But, and what the truth is, it's actually quite simple. And whatever. If anybody listened to Matt Schlapp, I guess we'd be in trouble. But thankfully, we don't. So that seems good news. All right, let's see. I will move on from there and pick up another thread of storylines here. Let's see. Did we? Oh, yeah, we got to that. Oh, no wonder we got that. I'm still stuck in the archives here. But there was an interesting commentary offered by Glenn Kirshner on yesterday's case decision. I thought it was kind of interesting. He was just pointing out by way of observation on the delays and how long it took to get to this decision. Trump loses most every court case. And that is true. And I've kind of documented that in the you're good at getting things done or getting stuff done or whatever, you dotard thread that I've put together and maintained on Twitter. But Trump loses most every court case, but his appeals involve endless delays. He loses and loses and loses, putting off his day of reckoning. In essence, he wins by losing. It's time for the courts to create an accelerated docket for interbranch governmental disputes. That's an interesting possibility. And a good observation, certainly. It's just plain true. The way Trump works is he just strings these things out, and it really doesn't matter that he loses over and over and over again, and no court in the end will end up supporting his legal team's stupid theories. If he can keep it tied up in the courts, where we still have to wait for a decision to come down before we can figure out where we stand legally, that's as good as that's as good as revoking the powers that Congress hopes to hold on to in order to keep him, be able to hold him accountable. It's a sad situation, but one we've noted in the past. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on at Roots Radio. Well, okay. Sort of taking a quick tour around what I still have left in pocket here. There's another, I guess, important development that we haven't gotten around to mentioning, which or we gave only brief mention to last week, when at the time, I think, Greg couldn't quite remember, one of the northern plains states that we were thinking of, where there was a Senate contest and there was a guy, and maybe, we could, and I had to sort of take a stab at what he meant here. It was the news that Steve Bullock, who had previously been running for president, has decided, though he insisted several times that this was simply not going to happen, to run for the Senate there in Montana. So that is big news, and we should give it a little bit more attention than just guessing at what was Greg talking about when he couldn't pinpoint the state or the name of the person who was running. The other day, yesterday as a matter of fact, Tuesday's morning digest from the Daily Kos elections staff will serve that purpose. Top story in yesterday's digest: Montana Democrats land their top candidate to challenge Republican Senator Steve Daines, which is a good reminder of, I guess, how vulnerable he is, as no one can remember that there is a senator named Steve Daines. But now you know. So let's see. Leading off, and we'll just use their little blurb on this to get this news reported. On Monday, Montana Governor Steve Bullock announced that he would challenge Republican Senator Steve Daines, giving Democrats their first choice to take on the Republican incumbent. Montana is a decidedly red-leaning state, but Bullock is far and away the best challenger Democrats could have hoped for. He's, after all, governor, right? But let's see, his entry could put another critical seat in the Senate into play as Democrats try to thread the needle to regain the Senate. Democrats had long hoped Bullock would change his mind and run despite ruling out a Senate bid following his failed Democratic presidential primary bid, and those hopes did not prove futile. That is good news. As the sitting governor, Bullock has already won two hard-fought elections in 2012 and 2016, and he had a strong approval rating in the few available polls. Bullock is also starting with very high name recognition, and should be able to raise ample money, making him a far more imposing challenger than the existing field of little-known Democratic contenders. Indeed, businesswoman Cora Newman had raised the most money and was likely the Democratic frontrunner before Monday, but she quickly bowed out of the race and endorsed Bullock. Bullock's decision to run provides Democrats with their best shot at ousting Daines, but it will still be an uphill battle. Montana backed Trump by a punishing 56 to 35% in 2016, and there's little indication, at least not yet, with 8 months to go until Election Day, that Trump will fare significantly worse there in November. Furthermore, Daines has done little to endanger himself beyond any generic Republican incumbent. In an era where fewer and fewer voters are willing to split their tickets, especially in federal races, Bullock will have a tougher time convincing Trump-leaning voters to cross over for him when the stakes appear higher. However, there's still a real chance he could pull off an upset win, and his running expands for Democrats what has long been a narrow path to flipping the Senate. Indeed, while Bullock will have to convince thousands of Trump supporters to vote for him, he managed to do so just 4 years ago. Asking voters to split their tickets for a federal race rather than a state-level election is a more difficult task, which is why Daines is still favored. But if anyone can put this race in play for Democrats, it's Bullock, which is why Daily Kos Elections is changing our rating for this race from safe Republican to lean Republican. So, well, I'm glad we were able to note that. That is probably our best shot. Fingers crossed for that one. We'll see how that goes. And anything is possible in the era of Trump, I guess. Let's see. Other stories that ought to be shared. I hinted at this, I guess, at the close of yesterday's show that there was this news of, or this note here from Adam Silverman at Balloon Juice blog, pointing out that there was a significant piece of information in the Eric Prince story that we discussed the other day. That is Eric Prince providing spies and spy training for Project Veritas and all of their crazy endeavors, and this time specifically their effort to entrap and embarrass the American Federation of Teachers. And the, I guess, under-mentioned aspect of all of this is that his current venture, Frontier Services, which is that basically the new name of Blackwater. They may have changed their focus somewhat. But anyway, his mercenary operations are funded by the Chinese, which is, kind of an interesting bit of news, don't you think? Adam puts it this way. The really important fact about Eric Prince that is not mentioned in the New York Times reporting that he has been using retired U.S. and British spies, presumably human intelligence officers, to teach James O'Keefe's Project Veritas employees to be more effective, is not that Prince founded and used to run Blackwater, nor that he's Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos's brother, nor that he's very close with the president and others in the administration and the re-election campaign. The really important fact is that Eric Prince's Frontier Services Group, the company of military contractors that he runs, is owned by DVN Holdings, which would ultimately make Prince its chairman. DVN Holdings is owned by Hong Kong investor Johnson Co. Chun and the Chinese International Trust Investment Corporation, or they're abbreviating this as CITIC, I guess, CITIC, Chinese International Trust Investment Corporation, which is a People's Republic of China-owned investment fund. Johnson Co. Chun is also on the board of directors of Cambridge Analytica, Cambridge Analytica spin-off Emerdata, Data, Emmer Data Limited, along with Rebecca Mercer, her sister Jennifer, as well as former senior officials from Cambridge Analytica. Emmer Data, and I don't know whether that's like emerging data, Emmer Data. Anyway, is also still tied to the former Cambridge Analytica's parent firm SCL Group. The important fact that everyone keeps missing, now you won't be missing it, is that Erik Prince's operations are funded by the People's Republic of China. He is now their asset. If he's involved with O'Keefe's merry band of political rat-effers, then he is only involved so long as Xi, the president, and the People's Republic of China want him to be. I don't know that they exert as much control as all that, but it's worth thinking about. The same goes for Emmer Data and anything else that Prince involves himself with. Despite having a long history of looting his own companies and skimming from his investors and backers, such as the Crown Prince of the United Arab Emirates, Prince's financial backing from the People's Republic of China's state-owned Chinese International Trust Investment Corporation means that he works for the People's Republic of China and does so only as long as he advances their interests. Xi and the PRC conduct their influence operations from weaponizing diplomatic, information, economic, financial, intelligence, and legal power as a form of 21st century warfare very differently than Putin and the Russians do. Similar in that they use the same, aspects of modern life to wield their powers, but they apparently take a different approach to it. Let's see. Xi and the PRC are subtle and precise, where Putin and the Russians are brutish and imprecise. The role of Prince's Frontier Services Group in advancing Xi's One Belt, One Road initiative, which is definitely not in the United States' strategic interests, is evidence of who is in charge in this relationship. And as we may recall from earlier discussions of Chinese foreign policy, I think what we learned about this was One Belt, One Road initiative. Is this the infrastructure construction initiative that the Chinese have undertaken, financing the building of enormous and important, commercially important infrastructure projects around the world, and negotiating long-term leases for themselves and for their armed forces when it comes to, say, ports, etc. But in other words, using the economic power of China to offer what appears to be infrastructure assistance to poorer countries around the world in exchange for retention of control of those projects once they're completed, which gives the Chinese a strategic foothold in, any country that accepts their money, which is pretty interesting. And I guess there you have to worry about whether or not, how independent can Prince remain if the Chinese operate around the world with the understanding that their money comes with significant strings attached everywhere else. It can't really be the case that Erik Prince is the one guy that gets to freelance with Chinese state money. That's probably true. Well, anyway, continuing on here, just to get to the conclusion here. Let's see. So, Xi and the PRC call the shots. And while they might give Prince a lot of rope to conduct business in his usual dodgy manner, we should never forget that they are, that is China and their president should never forget that they are the hands on the end of that rope. If Prince is paying former intelligence officers to train Project Veritas employees who will then interfere in domestic politics in the U.S., then he is doing it because it suits not just his or his sister's or the president's purposes. He's doing it because it suits Xi and the PRC's purposes. Who his paymasters are and how they exert control over their assets is the really important piece of information that everyone reporting on Prince's connection to Project Veritas and commenting on the reporting is missing. Okay. Well, a good observation. something worth keeping an eye on, and we don't need necessarily to tie it to Chinese influence in order to realize it's a dangerous and potentially extraordinarily stupid development. And wow. All right, keeping track of that, keeping an eye on that one. Let's see. We'll move on to a few other interesting notes that I have put away here. Another interesting shared thread that comes to us via Patrick Snyder, who adds this interesting aspect to the discussion. And I wonder now whether I saw earlier this morning, I wonder if I can find this as I'm pondering what this is. I think since we were just reading from Balloon Juice, John Cole, of course, the chief proprietor of the Balloon Juice blog, but it wasn't his writing that we were looking at. But let's see. Earlier this morning, I feel certain that I saw him tweeting about this. Yes, here it is. Okay. He was circulating this screenshot from, what are we looking at? Is it the Times, the Post? Whose screenshot is this? I guess probably the Post. But it's circling the Thomas Friedman piece with a big no. I won't be reading this. That argues Joe Biden, not Bernie Sanders, is the true Scandinavian. Interesting. And he was saying, sitting at my computer, wondering what combination of rewards and threats it would take to make me read this. I bring it up because I'm looking here at the thread that Patrick Snyder passed on to me from Jerry Taylor, president and co-founder of the Niskanen Center. I don't know how they pronounce it. Niskanen. Who I feel like we've seen the name before. Is that where Rachel Bidikofer now is working? At any rate, Jerry Taylor tweeting this thread beginning this way. Sanders argues that billionaires should not exist and aims to fix that by embracing the Nordic economic model of robust social democracy. We've heard that before, right? He says, inconvenient truth, Iceland, Sweden, and Norway all have more billionaires per capita than the United States. Very interesting. Patrick commenting here, I did not know this about the Nordic countries. Interesting short thread. Well, that's just what we're in the mood for, Patrick. So let's take a look at this. The initial tweet here from Taylor, as I said, Sanders argues billionaires shouldn't exist, aims to fix that by embracing the Nordic economic model of robust social democracy. Inconvenient truth, Iceland, Sweden, Norway all have more billionaires per capita than the United States. This attaching a FT, Financial Times, right? .com article entitled, Wealthy Americans Need Not Fear Bernie Sanders' Love of Nordic Socialism. Sweden and its ilk have even more billionaires per capita than the U.S. I'd be curious about reading the contents of that piece. But first, on to the rest of Taylor's thread. Chapter and verse from, names I'll have to pronounce, Carl Mone, perhaps Mone, from behind a paywall. I will not rest until I convince you progressives that the Nordic model, might not even be hard to convince us, let's find out. The Nordic model is not what you think it is. It is not socialism. Well, that'll probably be okay with us. It is go capitalism with a lot of social insurance. And it's good. And there's a link here to, I don't know what, an article, I suppose, upholding that point. Nor will, I guess he left out that article here, nor will I rest until I've convinced go capitalists that the Nordic model is not their enemy. Per the Niskanen Center's Samuel Hammond, who tweets as Hammond cheese. Get it? Samuel Hammond, but Hammond cheese. Per Samuel Hammond's writing here, you will not get go-go capitalism with far more robust social insurance. And here, the Niskanen Center's article that is attached, The Free Market Welfare State, Preserving Dynamism in a Volatile World. Okay. Jerry Taylor continues on. Why is that? Well, let the Financial Times opinion page tell you, and he's got a screen grab here. It says, first, public goods are a boon for private profit. Good transport, healthcare, and highly skilled populations paid for by the government are all things that reduce the cost that private businesses would otherwise have to shoulder. Think about that in healthcare terms as well, right? You should. Second, the Nordics' union-driven wage egalitarianism encourages businesses to adopt productivity-enhancing technology. Since low-skilled labor is relatively expensive and high-skilled labor is relatively cheap, there is more to gain from investing in the most efficient capital. As Norwegian comedian cum sociologist Harald Eia, I'm guessing at that pronunciation, has put it, it's EIA, Harald Eia, the labor movement subsidizes capitalists. Interesting. Third, a generous safety net sustains trust, and trust is an enormously valuable resource. It economizes on lawyers and courts by reducing the need for contracts and litigation when social norms can be relied on. It also helps minimize workplace antagonism over technological upgrading. Interesting. And the thread continues. And those Nordic social welfare states were not built on protectionism. Quite the contrary. It's an historical perversion that the progressive movement, which was born, wrong spelling, I think, in large part as a reaction against protectionism, now embraces the same. And here another piece of Financial Times writing, noting, but Mr. Sanders and Ms. Warren also need to acknowledge another aspect of the Nordic economy's success. They have always been among the world's they have been among the world's most open to international trade, vastly more so than the U.S. economy. This openness is accepted by the population, arguably precisely because of the country's strong safety nets. Rather than mimicking Mr. Trump's aversion to free trade, Mr. Sanders and Ms. Warren would do better to argue that they will make free trade safe for the most vulnerable Americans. That's an interesting thought as well. I guess we should have, we could all take a look, and we'll include all of this for you to look over, and that'll include the links to the Financial Times piece. Just sort of interesting. Now I'm thinking back to, I wonder, is that what it would take for us to read Tom Friedman on the idea that Joe Biden, not Bernie Sanders, is the true Scandinavian? Maybe is that drawing from that conclusion? I'm curious to go and find out, but I don't know if we'll be able to find that because John Cole only included a screenshot of it, no link to it. Not Bernie Sanders. Let's see. Let's take a look and see if we can Google it up real quick. Is the true Scandinavian? And here it is. All right. Okay. New York Times. I guess wrong, backwards. I forget who writes where these days. So New York Times piece from Friedman. Sanders totally misunderstands, the subheader says, what's behind Denmark's safety net. Now I'm just curious whether this refers to the Niskanen report or not. And it doesn't appear to up front, but I bet he's just plagiarizing. Let's accuse him of that. Why not? This is a piece from yesterday. Well, what will it take to get John Cole to read this piece? Perhaps me reading it to him. Or maybe now he's turning off the radio because I have threatened to read this thing. I'm kind of curious about this now. Maybe it's something worth uncovering. Bernie Sanders often cites Denmark, the one of the Nordic countries not mentioned in the list as having more billionaires. So why not? He sticks to Denmark. He got that right. He cites it as the kind of country he would like America to be under his ideology of democratic socialism. Well, here's a news flash, says, what's his face, who's writing this thing? Tom Friedman. Yes, Bernie Sanders, with his hostile attitudes toward free trade, that's true, free markets and multinational corporations, probably couldn't get elected to a municipal council in Denmark today. Well, he's not Danish. Ironically, Joe Biden, with his more balanced views on trade, corporations, and unions, probably could, and therein lies a column. Now, I don't know whether I'll actually indulge him in reading the column, but it's an interesting thought. Well, he says, I can explain this best by starting with a few questions that I'd love to ask Sanders about his democratic socialism, beginning with the most basic one. Senator Sanders, where do you think jobs come from? Uh-oh, that's my cue to get the hell out of this story. Probably, I mean, the cue really came from it being from Tom Friedman. But, yeah, I don't know that this is going to develop into something that I find of interest after all. But it was an interesting observation. I much more enjoyed Patrick Snyder's reference here to Jerry Taylor's thread. I think that was something that we can take the basic meaning away and file it away without having to listen to Tom Friedman opine on this thing. Let's see. One last thing here. Brian Monroe sent us a tweet here with the KITM hashtag. Although I don't see myself as a Liberal Party member, he says, and remember, Canadian Liberal Party member, I have to give them credit for their efforts during this outbreak. Some information. Maybe this will help us figure things out, Ricky, about what they're doing up there that's so different. He includes the tweet of Tom Milroy Jr., as a matter of fact. Let's go in and pop in and take a look here. A partner in a security and defense firm and an HR professional, was the 2015 Green candidate for Ottawa Centre. Still Green, just not Green Party, he notes for us. Brian, of course, ran for election under the Green Party banner as well, so perhaps they know one another. But Tom's tweet here is, this picture choked me up. If I was a Canadian on board the Grand Princess, I likely would have broken into tears seeing this sunshade dockside. In other words, here are the passengers emerging from the once sort of, I guess, stranded cruise ship off of the coast of San Francisco, and I guess getting off of the boat and being processed. There's a particular place for Canadian citizens who were aboard to go. The tent being largely, I think, a little bit over-decorated, if you ask me, with Canadian flags, but you can never get enough flags. You know how that goes. But this picture choked me up. If I was a Canadian on board the Grand Princess, I likely would have broken into tears seeing this sunshade dockside. Our government has done a great job here. The Canadians on board are now in quarantine at the largest airbase on Canadian soil. So, interesting. Well, they've branded their response very well, at the very least. I don't know if that tells us about its effectiveness, but I guess it's worth pointing out Canada showing up and taking care of its citizens abroad, then bringing them back home and quarantining them as guests on of the Canadian Air Force. Very interesting, and I guess meets with Greg's approval as well, as he retweets Brian's tweet about it to share with the rest of the world. Okay, time for us to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and probably best at this point not to try and get too far into any other stories. We'll be back tomorrow and check in with other political developments and, of course, coronavirus developments. And maybe I can find somewhere that now growing, I'm sure, list of colleges and universities that are closing, waiting to see whether any here in Virginia begin to shut down. Haven't gotten any word about that. And word, of course, anxiously awaited over whether or not my own son's college and university is going to shut down. We'll see if we can find out about that. and report on that. In the meantime, back out to preparedness shopping, I suppose, for me. How about you? If you haven't been out, so far the markets in our area, not too crazy, actually, in terms of people going overboard, except the toilet paper craze is beginning to catch on here. That much I noticed. Justice Putnam will probably tell you all about the world toilet paper situation. But in addition, let's see, the political reckoning that coronavirus has created for Trump, who insists that the world was blindsided somehow by this pandemic. There's also got news on a federal appeals court ruling that the DOJ has to hand over those grand jury materials. We'll see what his angle is on that one. The U.S. military said Trump's Taliban peace deal. Do you remember that? I didn't even mention it. But we didn't lose anything by not mentioning, because it turns out it's considered to be mostly useless. No surprise there. And lawyers for U.S. soccer argued in a court filing that they can't give the women's team equal pay because women athletes are, can you believe they're saying this out loud, less skilled and work less demanding jobs than male athletes. Well, that'll get them in trouble. I'll tell you what comes up in the last half of his show after this break.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, around the world now, where the UK Special Crimes Agency is probing the purchase of a London mansion by the ex-Kazakh president's grandson. And Dutch prosecutors charged that Russia tried to thwart their investigation of the shooting down of the MH17 commercial airliner. Always thwarting investigations, those guys.